But he hasn't started yet.
Let's go. So we'll have this. We'll have stirring in the Yefuata Shela Imi Morati, on behalf of my dear mother, Sarah and Daisy, at Yvonne. She's been having some hypertension, and as a good son who loves her, I'm also having some hypertension. So we're going to continue on this wonderful subject of Shmot HaElokim. And we will give a reminder of what we saw actually last week. But I will not start with that, because actually there's something we'll take which would be very appropriate for us to remember what we saw last week. We started with Rashi, Parashat Shemot, about Perek Gimel, Moshe, saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu that people will ask, Ma Shemo, what is his name? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu had this answer about we went from Rashi to Medrash, which is today inside Masad Brachot, Daftet, and we went from there to Maseret Kedushin, and then last week we had the grandson of Rashi, Rashbam, and we went on a path that slowly went from considering that the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is just as he expressed to Moshe Rabbeinu, which was, I will be with you, just like I'm with you now in this trouble. You have to know that this isn't just some type of interpretation of the text, which would be attributing in a way, in an arbitrary manner, the name Ekeke to HaKadosh Baruch Hu only because the text says Ekeke Asher Ekeke, which literally means I will be as I will be, in the sense of, as the Medrash says, that he will be with us in the other galuyot, in the other exiles, just as he was with us in Egypt. But that on Kelos, if you look back at Targum on Kelos on this very pasuk, you will see that on Kelos refuses to translate Ekiyeke Aleph Yudke as meaning I will be. As he could do so and translate so in Aramaic, but he doesn't do so. As he really himself translates as Ekiyeke inside the Aramaic text. So in other words, he considers himself Onkelos. So you see the tradition till already from the time of Onkelos was that Ekiyeke is really the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's what he's expressing. Now we saw last time that Rashbam was taking that very, very seriously, to the point of saying that the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actually Aleph Ke Yud Ke, only that we know him as being Yud Ke Vav Ke, and there's this allusion to the other possibility of Yud Ke Yud Ke. He will be. Now, I would like to take a bit more time today with the Balaturim. And Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher was the son of the Rosh. You know, he was born in what was called at that point the Holy Roman Empire. It was a reminiscence of the Roman Empire. That is, after the Roman Empire was already non-existing, centuries later, you have this nostalgia of the Roman Empire, and so he later lived in Toledo, Castilla, and in Spain, today Spain. And he gave us this commentary, which on many ways is very cryptic, because it's very much giving only just bits of information here and there. It uses a lot what is called the Masorah. Today's editions of the Tanakh, for some reasons which are beyond me, many times forget the Masorah. I don't even know what the Masorah is. The Masorah was those little notes on the sides of the text that were expressing, for example, how many times certain terms appears in the Torah, how many times it appears in the whole Tanakh. And we're giving, in a way, the little codes that you could say were used, understood by, and the sages, but of course the Sofrim. So the ones who were actually writing. And it's called the Masorah, and today you have a hard time finding actually an edition of the Torah that actually has the Masorah. The Balaturim was making main usage of the Masorah, just like Rashi was using Onkelos and using the Midrashim. You see that the Balaturim was using the Masorah.
And he didn't have it in his head, he got it from that, from the Masorah?
Well,
I was always so impressed. Like, wow, no, there's only 5 times is this word. Like,
well, it is. He was using the Masorah as guidelines for his discoveries about the Madrid. It is the type of like things where you are saying this is like things like that. You were looking Masorah, now you know what was called the Masorah Tana, you have the Masorah Gdola. Masorah Gdola is actually something quite recent. It's people who actually try to make sense of the Masorah. That is, when it was saying you have 5 times this word, well, how do you know where they are? So there's one way which you go through the whole text, right? On your own, and you find those 5 times, right? You have another way you Google it today, right? But it didn't, it wasn't the way of those times, and there was much more merit at that point, okay, than today. Today you have more ease, but you have less merit. So different. It changes like that. So the Balaturim, who is about 2 centuries now after Rashbam, so we're going like closer and closer to our time. He had this very interesting observation, is that when Moshe Rabbeinu told Akadosh Baruch Hu, "Ve'amru li ma shemo, ma omar," right? So you pay attention that if you say "Ma'amru li," the last letter Yud, ma is he, shemo is vav, and ma is he. So you pay attention to the fact that actually you have Shem Yud Ke Vav Ke inside there. Now pay attention that like this goes a bit further, not in saying Mashemu, like the full answer, but there's only the ma, what will I say? And it goes really with the idea that Rashbam had, which is saying, look, his real name is Ekiyeke, but on the other hand, what shall I tell them? Well, we have it till today, right? All us Jews are convinced the name of Akadosh Baruch Hu is Yud Ke Vav Ke. So here you have it. These are the Sofet Tevot. Li, ma, shemo, ma. Okay. And you have the Yud Ke Vav Ke. Now, the Balaturim is never going to give you like a full commentary. You could take bits and pieces of what he tells you and build yourself some coherent commentary, some coherent understanding. I like to look at the Balaturim not as such a matter. I like to look at the Balaturim as in a way telling us what were the bits and pieces of revelation that he related to. Wisdom is something that you draw down. Yeah. You certainly know what's written in the Gemara, who is Chacham. I'm not talking to you about Pirkei Avot. He says, who is Chacham? The one who received Chachma. So you say, so how does he ever get a Chacham? To become a Chacham, right? I mean, how does it start? And of course, it's about Yirat Hashem. Yirat Hashem is Bereshit Chochma. So the beginning of Chochma is Yirat Hashem. And so you could also ask, well, then how do you get to any type of Yirah? How do you actually fear Hashem? How do you get to it type of fear? And David HaMelech answers it for you. He tells you, Yahed Libi Li'yira Shemecha. That is, it's some unification of your heart that you ask from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it starts by really requesting, asking from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you would do this unification of your heart. From there, you will have Yira. From Yira, you have a Rochma. And then you draw it down. See? So the Baturim obviously need to do that, and that's the whole matter. Continues and explains that really in the Pasuk itself, which where HaKadosh Baruch Hu enters in, there's the first two Eki Asher Eki. So you have the first two Eki. And then you have the second statement, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling Moshe, well, tell them, Eki sent me. Now we know that the Midrash was telling us, well, why do you have this discrepancy? Why do you have this matter which seems to be contradictory? Because the first time he's having the answer of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of tell them, just like I'm with you in this trouble, with you in later trouble. And Moshe answers and says, no, you should put a limit to the tzara and its hour. This is not possible. I can't talk to them like that. And so he says, okay, then tell them Eki sent you. Then the simple answer. So you really have 3 times Eki in this passage. And the Baturim says, actually, look, think about it. Eki corresponds to the 3 Avot, right? To Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov. And he goes into explaining the 3 usages of the term Eki. The first one, really, for Abraham is Weheye. And Weheye are the letters of Yud-Kei. Okay. Weheye Beracha. And you shall be a blessing. For Yitzchak, it is said, Gur ba'aretz hazot, Weheye imecha, and I will be with you. And for Yaakov, it says, Shuv el eretz avotecha, Weheye imach, and I will be with you. So the 3 of them have this thing about, I will be, though the first one is really, and you will be, right? And be, it should be. Now, why is Baturim interested in that idea? Well, you see, our original problem was there is a tradition of a 12-letter name, right? And on the other hand, well, if you take Eki Asher Eki, it won't work, right? Because you will have, how many letters do you have? You have 11. Right? If you had Asher in the middle, right? So you would say, well, you have 1 missing letter. On the other hand, Baturim says, look at the Pasuk. You have 3 times Shem, Eki. Now he makes another remark, very interesting. He says, look, Eki is Gematria 21. And he says it's also the Gematria of the initial letters of the attributes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we say Hashem, Kel, Rachum V'Chanun, Hashem, Yud, Hashem, Yud, Kel, Aleph, Yud, Aleph. Yud, Aleph is really 21. It's really Eki. He goes a bit further in that matter. He tells us also it's actually the initial of the initial letters of all the 5 books of the Torah. Right? Now we know the first one as being Bereshit, right? Now Shemot, it doesn't stop Shemot. Okay, so you take the first letter of each book, and you will find that you will have the Bet, Wav, and Aleph. Aleph, your Elia Devarim. So you really have Bet, Wav, and Aleph. And that, if you look at the Gematria of it, gives you 21. It corresponds to it. So he's seeing, confirmation of this. And then he tells you, well, if you take 2 times Eki, so you think it's a bit arbitrary. He tells you 2 times now when he told you 3 times before, but anyway, he tells you 2 times now because it was said Eki, Asher Eki. Then that time, in that point, you'll have 42, and he says it's like a letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he's obviously alluding to all kind of different things, and it's hard to know with the Balaturim, if actually in his time, all that he talks about, if one really knew those names or didn't know those names, we know that Rashi says on Maseret Kiddushin, the 12-letter name they didn't know. Rashi says that. The Balaturim is going to give another allusion to the 12-letter name, just in a few seconds. I mean, he is humble servant, but you also have this interesting, continuity of the commentary of the Balaturim, where he says, well, if we know that you really have 3 times Ekiyeke, what is 3 times Ekiyeke? Each Aleph K Yud K is 21. 3 times 21 is 63, right? And why is it interesting? Because it's actually the second Shem Hashem, which we call Sag. Now, at first, you can't know why it's interesting, right? Why is it really interesting? Why is Sag so interesting? No. Why is it so interesting? So you could say, well, we have 4 names that are 4 developments of Shem Yud Kivat. The first one is Ab, Ein Bet, which is we call Hawaya de Yodim, because we develop it in Yud. The second one, you can't call it nor the Yodim, nor the Alefin, nor the Hehin, because actually the K, the He is developed in Yud, but the Wav is developed in Aleph. Okay? So it's become Yud Wav Dalet, K Yud, Wav Aleph Wav, K Yud. That's Sag. Then you have the third name, which is Ma, which is Swata, which is Ma, which is Awaya de Alefin. So it's all developed in Aleph. And then we have Ben. Now, we alluded before to the Masorah, and there's if you look at the famous Zeshemi Le'olam, at the term Le'olam, which is written in this strange matter of Lamed Ain, Part Lamed Musufi, you see that the Masorah tells you that you have 10 times in the Torah Le'olam. And this was a tradition behind the idea that you would have 10 letters in Shem Ab, 10 letters in Shem Sag. That was saying that's why it's Zishini Le'olam. That's why the Masorah would tell you have 10 times, and that's enough.
So Le'olam, 10 times without Vav, or 10 times.
Obviously.
That's
the way the Masorah works. If the Masorah tells you on a word that it's 10 times like that, it means that it's just the way it's written. It's Chaser. So it's Chaser Vav, so it's and the Balaturim wants to take it one step further. So of course you have some Shem Sag, as we just said, and it's interesting. It could be on a Kabbalistic viewpoint. It can become very interesting when you understand that the second Shem Baruch, the second Hawaya corresponds to Ima, and Ima does correspond to Shem Ekiyeke. So you have a correspondence which seems very much natural, but we're getting ahead of ourselves because we define anything like that. Do we know what Imaila is here? Do we know what it means above the Ima? So it's a bit abstract, and it's easy to get ourselves lost into things that we have not defined before. Balaturim sees something which is quite deep about this Sag, and he explains it. He says that not only the 3 appearances of the word Ekiyeke made altogether 12 letters, that they correspond to the 12 tribes. And that, as he just said before, those 3 names is for the 3 Avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. But he's going to play with the letters of the Avot and of the tribes. You have a teaching in Maseret Sota. It's Daf Lamed Wav Amud Aleph, where a whole discussion about the number of letters that were used by the sons of Yaakov. And it comes to the conclusion that you should have 50. Now, if you look at the beginning of Parashat Shemot, you'll have some trouble because whatever count you do, however you do it, you will find 49. You don't find the 50. So you're stuck. You don't know what to do with it. This Gemara is going to explain, it's going to tell, well, maybe Yosef was actually expressed as Yehosef, as we see it inside the Mizmorim. There's one Mizmorim that uses the term Yehosef instead of Yosef. Okay, so that's the thing. On the other hand, in the way that it's expressed in the original tradition, the Baraita is really saying, hey, these are the names as they were given to the children of Yaakov. Was Yehosef really given as such? No, we have used it after. On the other hand, we have a tradition that Binyamin was using his studio, and that's the way the Gemara solves it. And so you have really the 12 tribes using 50 letters, the Avot, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov using 13 letters, 50 plus 14 is 63, that's Sag, and we're happy and everything's fine. Now,
I'm sorry, but isn't all of this that you explain, this is Kinuim, how do you say in English? This is nickname to Hashem.
appellations, yes.
Nickname to Hashem that they are coming to describe is Anagah Ba'olam. His way he
rules the world. Yes.
the world. But this is no. If we take the names of the Tzfat, the 12, and the name of the Avos together, but eventually we want to know the core, not the way he is being called by or referred to by the world because of his highness. Like a king, we don't call him the king. Yosef.
What we just said before that we call Yirom Odo.
The Homodo.
Yes.
It's only Kinoi. So where is the root? Where is the name of Hashem? But I was told by someone.
That's the purpose of the Shurim. We're on the third one.
Okay.
So okay.
I was told not to build it.
Well, it's not the matter. On the other hand, we did have an agreement after the first shiur that I will let you ask whatever question you would like on the fifth session, but not before. We did have.
I don't remember.
But I
what I like, what I don't like, I don't
Now, what did we have originally? Eke, Asher, Eke. If you do the gematria of Eke, Asher, Eke, you will find gematria of 543. It's not difficult to do. Asher is 501. Eke was 21. 21 times 2 is 42. That's 511, 514. What is a tradition about this 513? Well, first, we don't realize, but we actually use the tradition each and every time a child is named. Why do we say Be'Israel? Because Be'Israel is the gematria of 543. And our goal, and that's the very essential kavanah, is that even as we give the name to a child, we have this reminder that any name we give to a child by the end is to remind what is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. As he sent Moshe Rabbeinu with the name Eke Asher Eke, which is of the gematria of 543, which is this. Now you could tell me, well, that's a very nice trick. Very interesting. But you see, I can show you some more evidence of that. And one of them, where you will find back what the Balaturim is telling you, yet starting from the original expression of Eki, Eki, Asher, Eki, is, and it's only one of them, because I can tell you that from the moment that I've had the extraordinary merit of gaining those glances, I like to call them, more than glimpses. I call it glances because you actually glance, and in the sense that you really you glance as some revelation, as some sense of who is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or what is his name. And as my master, Halav Shalom, gave me all those glances, I've been going into this search for all those years. And I could give you even lists, but I won't do so. But you have a famous expression, which is actually a very, very central expression for us, which is used by David Melech, Israel Chai V'Kayam, in saying, "V'yiftechu becha yodei shemecha," and which is really the motivation of this whole shiurim, right? Because I cited the pasuk last time already, and it really is at the heart of the matter. Why? Because you could always say, well, what type of curiosity is that, right? To actually know about the Shemot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when we know that even the Kohanim, between themselves, it was not everyone was receiving those names. So what is this kind of strange curiosity where suddenly we're going to expect to actually know, right? The Shemot that were transmitted in such secrecy by the Kohanim. What's going on here? Sorry? Now it's very interesting. There's a few things in this passage. First, there is about the idea of the bitachon. You see, in the old times, there wasn't any concept, any abstract concept that we have today of emunah. And if you don't believe me, then find me of that abstract concept of emunah from the time even of the Amoraim. Find me any example of the Amoraim and before, and I'll be glad to put on. But to my knowledge, there isn't any reason. Why? Because they were not using the term emunah. Emunah for them was only belonging to HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, not to humans. Which is why David Melech Israel Chavekam himself says, "You are dov vadov emunatu, emunah shelo." It so much became so, by the way, that one invented in modern Hebrew a term to mean what emunah was supposed to be. That's what happens, when you distort words. By the end, you need to invent yourself a new word to say what it was supposed to mean from a Jew. And people use it in Hebrew today as being ne'emanut. Ne'emanut was never supposed to exist in the first place because there already was a term for it. It's called emunah. And emunah was never supposed to take any other meaning than the meaning of ne'emanut in modern Hebrew. Only that we distorted this idea of emunah. And so, of course, we needed to have a new word. And who helped us distort it? The Christians, the Muslims, we lived in their midst. They had foreign ideas. And we went and we surfed on their foreign ideas. Till today. The original idea that we have of something which comes close to what people call today emunah is called bitachon. Israel betach b'Hashem. And so what does the pasuk says? V'yiftechu becha. So in a way you can say, and it would be very imperfect translation. I said from the beginning because I myself don't like to translate that, but of saying they will trust in you. But don't throw me tomatoes or anything like that. But it doesn't say that. But that's how you translate as the first translation. Who will have this ability to have bitachon in him, to have bitachon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yodei Shemecha, the ones who know your name. And that's the whole purpose of why we're having the shiurim. And why am I insisting so much on this pasuk? Well, not only because the concept is exactly talking about the shiurim, but you know, Yiftechu Becha has a gematria of 543. Now you could tell me, how is that? Because any one of you would try it, you will find maybe that it has another type of gematria. Well, I have to warn you, we have two ways of thinking what Yot Sofiyot and letters. The Chaf Sofit can be thought as a normal Chaf, which would be then 20, but the Chaf Sofit can be thought as 500. There's those two ways. There's one way which is, you know, of the old system, what we call of the Adbash, and another call what we call of the Becher, and there's all kinds of different systems. But these are the two main systems. Yiftechu Becha has this gematria of 543, which was Be'Israel, as we said, which is the gematria of Eki, Asher Eki. But if you could always tell me, hey, you know, what is this 500 you invented out, you know, out of your hat here for the Chaf Sofit, Yiftechu Becha, right? Why did you come out with the 500 only in order to come back to 543? Well, let's try it then with a normal Chaf, in the sense of only 20. You would need to take away 500, right, which is for the Chaf Sofit, and you would need to add 20, right? So if you take 500 away from 543, how much is left? 43, right? Not difficult. How much do you have if you add 20? You get 63. Sag. So you see, the idea originally, and that's the reason that Turin so much insists on that matter of telling you, you know, I need to tell you about the story about Sag and about Eki, because you see, when it's written in the Torah that Moshe was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu that his name is Eki Asher Eki, it's actually starting a tradition which tells us about this 543, which obviously, you know, are extraordinary, you know, call him Mashiach, right? Because that's what David Melech Israel Chavekayim essentially is. Because if Mashiach ben David is Mashiach, you know, how can it be Mashiach if David Melech Israel Chavekayim isn't himself? Right? So the authority in understanding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you all heard why Adam is called Adam. One talks about the Aleph for Adam, the Daleth for David, and the Mem for Mashiach. It's like it's a completion. It's a completion of creation, of how the soul has known to correct itself and to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu closer. And you should know, by the way, that this is not, you know, there are people that take Sefer Tehillim as being, okay, you know, that's fine, like it's fine for children to be reading Sefer Tehillim, you know, women also read Sefer Tehillim, we have it inside the liturgy, we have it in this. No, Sefer Tehillim is actually the ultimate, seriously. Sefer Tehillim is actually the ultimate. It has someone who really values and understands what there is to understand in the Chochmat and Star, in the Pnimiut of Torah. If he cannot see back this Pnimiut of Torah inside Sefer Tehillim, then you should really wonder what is it he understands. Because all those wonders are there inside Sefer Tehillim. You know, I could give you, you know, lectures and lectures on Sefer Tehillim because I love Sefer Tehillim, not that I have this ability, only because I have this devotion for those words.
What about I'm not supposed to ask.
Well, you did. Keep them for the last session, please. Well, you can write them down.
It's not like being obeyed just now.
See, I'll tell you one thing. Many have thought that anything that deals with Pnimiut, you can have it in the same way that you would have people. Today, the way one learns Gemara a lot, you will have a chavruta, and you would see them, you would think that one is angry at the other, and vice versa, and like most of hitting at each other with their arguments. And that's fine as long as it's true. But when you get to matters that are more minute, you don't go into people. In the same way that the ideal in a couple is not that they would be hitting each other in order to express love. That is the type of aggressivity you would have between in Chavruta on matters of what we will call Torah Nigle should not be existing in the point of what we call Torah Nistar and what we call Mili Kriyut. At the point of Kriyut, matters are actually, at the point of being pleasant, of being silent. I can even tell you that the sages of old, and my master was looking at them, most of them as being even youngsters, because they were the generation after him, some of them that even didn't know Yeshivat and Mikubal in Bethel before the Jordanians destroyed it. But you see, even those of like around the 1960s, they had this beautiful habit. They would take the text, and the text of like in Kitve Ari, like Sefer Etzraim, they would take one paragraph. They would take easily 20 minutes to read this paragraph, as slowly as they were taking it. And you could say, I can tell you that the modern generation has no patience for that. In particular, that those who learn a lot of that or sometimes have Hebrew as a mother tongue. And so because they have Hebrew as a mother tongue, they think that they're going to like read it in the same way that they read anything else. It doesn't work like that. At the point that I was struggling with Hebrew years ago, my master saw that. And he told me, no, you're just like me. Also, Hebrew was not his mother tongue. Some of the different forms of Arabic were his mother tongue when he came home. And he said, it's a chance that Hebrew is not your mother tongue. Because when it is not your mother tongue, it stays holy for you. It stays a struggle. It stays something which is challenging. And you cannot never take the Hebrew for granted. And you're never going to read it as if you're reading just anything. You are going to read it slowly, mindfully. You're going to just give it some sense. And not only they were taking like 20 minutes to read one paragraph, they were taking after that about half an hour of silence in order to reflect on what they actually did. And no questions were allowed. Only at the very end. That's the way it was done. That's the way it was done. Now I know that today we're used to something which like is totally opposite. I can tell you even the Cham Kaduri had this beautiful way of doing things. He would welcome anyone to the first shul. Anyone. There's anyone, as long as we had conditions, I have to be more than 20 years old, married, anyway. Does anyone is like has conditions, but let's call it anyone. So he would come in, have the first session. But if after the first session he felt this person was not in place there, he would not tell him anything, but he would have a little petek sent to his home. And on that petek, he would say, do not come back. Finished. And as long as he didn't receive any other petek to tell him to come back, for his whole life, he was not supposed to come back. That's it. That's the way it works. I'm not here to impose those rules here, but still, the matter is that there's a point where what we talk about has a certain, or at least we would like it to approach more and more holiness. And there's a point where the people is actually breaking that. So, where were we? We said Eki Asher Eki, which corresponds to 5.40, is actually the gematria of Tehu Becha. But when you take the Chaf Sofit as just normal Chaf, as 20, it makes again 63, which is the sag that we started from. Now, if you hear me say that, you should be actually have a temptation. You should be tempted to find letters in the Torah that would be 12 letters that would have a gematria of 543, right? Because that would seem like appropriate. If you listen to what we said both today and the past 2 weeks, then you would think, that seems pretty much a good idea. Well, if you try to do that, and I wouldn't invite you to do that because it's a very interesting thing to do, but it takes you a lot of time to do so. But if you try to do so, you will find out that there is no such thing. There aren't 12 letters in the Torah that make 543. There are 11 letters, there are 13 letters, and there are all the counts almost before and all the counts after. But you don't have any 12 letters in the Torah that make 543. And that is indeed part of the secret. See? Now, the Baal HaTurim has a commentary which in a way continues in this parasha. And why am I going to do so? Well, because you see, this parasha, which is Vayera, has in a way an answer to the original question. Because it says, Vayedaber Elokim el Moshe, Vayomer elav ani Yud Kei Vav Kei. Clear? And it says, Va'era, that's the reason we call it the parasha Va'era, Va'era el Avraham, el Tzfat, el Yaakov. I appeared to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov. Bekel Shin Dalet Yud, through the name Aleph Lamed Shin Dalet Yud. Ushmi Yud Kei Vav Kei lo nodati lahem. Now, there's something very interesting. Is that if you wanted the meaning of the Torah to say, and the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, I did not make it known to them, you would say Lo Hodati Lahem. You wouldn't say Lo Nodati Lahem. So what is this whole Lo Nodati Lahem? Now you have a full, I don't know if we'll have enough time for that. I think that you will not have, but you actually have a full Ramban. A very, very interesting commentary of the Ramban, who actually originally takes issue with Rashi, with Ibn Ezra, and actually by the end explains that there's good reasons why to go in the understanding that Ibn Ezra was giving originally. So I invite you to actually go see that. I don't think that we will have time. Maybe next time we could start with that. We could just give a summary of what the commentary of the Ramban says. But I invite you to actually go look at the Ramban on this. Here is what the Baal HaTurim says on the beginning of our parasha of this week. He says, Vayera, I appeared. He says it really can be read as Wav Era, in the sense that I appeared, that this appearance, the way for the term Vayera, he appeared, is written 6 times with regard to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Avot. 3 times with Abraham, twice with Yitzchak, and once with Yaakov. Now, the other thing which is striking in this parasha is that though it says Vayomer elav, and you will tell, and he said to him, so he said to Moshe, Ani Hashem, the pasuk starts Vayedaber Elokim. Extraordinary play. That's extraordinary irony. It starts by telling you Vayedaber Elokim and tell him Ani Hashem. I mean, for sure, us Jews have sense of humor, but we have it from above. Just to put this thing inside the Torah to kind of tickle us a bit about what's going on here. The other matter for us is what is this, Shem, Kel Shaddai. Now, Shem Elokim here has been, we all know this tradition that Shem Elokim, that it will questions of judgment, whereas Shem Baruch Hu would be in questions of chesed. Very honestly, it's a bit reductive. I mean, I have a hard time saying that. It's fine, when you start to want to have some basis. And obviously, Shem Elohim has more to do with Din, whereas Shem Havaya has more to do with Chesed. It's not just matter, these are things that are so general. But after that, in actual practice, there is something which needs to be a bit more refined. The Balaturim says that it's the term Elohim which is used because Moshe Rabbeinu was being rebuked. Now, if you want to understand what is meant by that, you will have to go back to what Rashi says on the beginning of Parashat Vayera, and you will also see what the Ramban, as I was inviting you to do, says on that. And you could always say, well, rebuked for what? Well, it's rebuked for having said just a few psukim before, Vayashav Moshe el Hashem vayomar Amonai. That's also the irony of the Torah, that this time is Aleph Dalet Nun Yud. Okay, so this is, I'm reading it in Shemot, Perek He, Pasuk Chavet. Lama hareota la'amaz. Literally is, why have you brought harm to this? Fascinating. Lama ze shalchtani. Now, it corresponds well to what we learned here now. Why? Because at the very beginning of Parashat Shemot, the matter was saying, Moshe asking Hakadosh Baruch Hu, what's your name? Because you sent me. So what is the name I'm going to give them? And now he's reproaching Hakadosh Baruch Hu that he actually did harm to us. That things have been difficult. Now, if you don't believe me, just go look back at the Torah. It was Parashat of last week. If you missed it last week, then go back last week and we'll see. So it is indeed written so, So Asad just said that Moshe was in a way rebuked for saying that. But don't forget that when Hakadosh Baruch Hu heard Moshe Rabbeinu say, Daya letzara b'sha'ata, there's a limit to the tzara in its hour. What did Hakadosh Baruch Hu answer him? Yafeh dibarta. You answered. He said, well. Now, so can Moshe Rabbeinu be really rebuked when on the other hand Hakadosh Baruch Hu told him, well, you talked well, it was correct? It's a good question, but you know why this whole matter is here? Because it all has to do with Shem, Shin, Dalet, Yud. That is, the Shem, Shin, Dalet, Yud, there's a tradition which on one hand will tell you, why is Hakadosh Baruch Hu called Kel, Shin, Dalet, Yud? Why? Well, because he's the only one who can say die. Shamar die. He's the only one who can say enough of this. Now, interesting that we would have this tradition, because actually in what we saw 2 weeks ago, it's Moshe Rabbeinu himself who tells Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So that makes it very interesting about this parasha. Is that on one hand, it's Moshe Rabbeinu who reminded Hakadosh Baruch Hu that enough of this, right? I mean, I can tell them I'm with you now, but don't tell them I'll be with you and you have a trouble later on, just like I'm with you in the trouble now. No, don't tell them that. On the other hand, the very term he used, and which is obviously the reason why Hakadosh Baruch Hu told him, Yafeh dibarta, you talked well. Because in saying Daya letzara b'sha'ata, he actually reminds the name of Hakadosh Baruch Hu as Shin Dalet Yud, Shamar Dai. That is, Moshe Rabbeinu was actually reflecting back to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, who is Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and what he knows of him through the Avot. Now, you might tell me, well, hey, is it really such? Is it really so? Is it really that Hakadosh Baruch Hu was known by the Avot as being, Kel Shaddai, and now he's being known as Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei? We have evidence of something which is more complex than that. Yes, but that's the reason why the Torah has this beautiful play with words, with letters actually, which is that says, Shemi Hashem, Shemi Yud Kei Vav Kei, Not written, as we said, lo hodaeti lahem, in the sense of it's not, I did not make it known to them. I did not make myself known. So then it's very difficult to say, how do you work with that? On one hand, the subject seems to be Shemi Yud Ke Vav Ke. That seems to be the subject of the verb. On the other hand, the subject of the verb, it doesn't seem to be really meaning that, because it's not written Hodeati, it's written Lo Nodaiti. So how do you really work with that? Well, the Ramban has a long, big explanation about that. I'm going to use just a bit of what the Balaturim says to explain it slightly. The Balaturim pushes his explanation and says Waira is 208. Waira is Yitzchak. Just wants to see some elements. But again, that's why I'm telling you that you cannot build from the Balaturim full commentary, because when you hear that, your first question would be to tell him, well, build me Shem Yaakov, build me Shem Avraham. Avraham is 248, Yaakov is 182. So, if you have something there, just don't give me just Yitzchak. Why would you only give me Yitzchak? No. You actually have a beautiful reason why you would only give Yitzchak, by the way. Is that only Avraham and Yaakov had directly Shem Kel Shaddai being given to them as the name of HaKadosh. Yitzchak did not. And so that may be the reason why the Balaturim is only giving Yitzchak, and that's what is actually meant. And then you have this next commentary, which corresponds to something that I humbly alluded to last week, which is the fact that Wa'era el Avraham, the last letters is actually Aleph, Lamed, Mem, like Ilem, and a voiceless person, mute. And the Balaturim explains and says, Sha'asu atzmam ilemim velo hirharu ahar midotai. So in other words, they acted like mutes, like they're muted, and they did not question my ways. And as we saw last week, there's also another expression of the thing about this matter, is that Shem Elokim without Ke is also Ilem. And that is something that I hope to develop a bit more in the coming weeks, which is the whole matter about Shmot Elokim, which is really at the heart of this whole matter of the multiplicity of the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because as we know from Zechariah, Bayom Hahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. So the ultimate goal is to make of the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu only one, only be one. Whereas Shem Elokim is exactly the definition of this multiplicity. It's a plural on its own, as Yud Mem. And so you have the whole idea of the multiplicity inside Shem Elokim. And how do we deal with that? What's the matter, and what does it mean to us? So we will talk about that, not this week, because we only have just a few minutes left out of the tolerance of. Thank you. So the Balaturim has some further commentary, and he explains, for example, that if you take the final letters of the Avot, you take, Avraham, Mem, you take Yitzchak, Kuf, Yaakov, Bet, and you apply the Adbash, you exchange an Aleph to Tav, a Bet to Shin, etc. Then you find yourself with Bet, Kuf, and Mem, which give you the letters Bet, Kuf, and Mem in Adbash. Shin Dalet Yud. If you take Bet, Kuf, and Mem, which are the last letters of the Avot, in Adbash they actually give you Shin Dalet Yud. And so he tells you that's the reason that he said I was only known to them as being, Kel Shaddai. And additionally, he goes into expressing the fact that if you take, the first letters as being Aleph, Yud, and Yud, right, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, you obviously would have the gematria of Shem Eke. right? And and he takes this this beautiful pasuk from the Mizmorim, which is Choneh Malach Hashem Saviv Yireav, the sense of saying that the first letters, the last letters, they express something. But it's not for no reason that he uses that pasuk, Malach Hashem. Because why is the name Kel Shaddai the name which is referred to concerning the Avot? You see, later on in Sefer Shemot, in Parashat Mishpatim, you have this promise of Ine Anochi Sholeach Malach Lefanecha. Of HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, I'm going to send an angel in front of you who will take you out today. And the pasuk ends by saying, Ki Shemi Bekirbo, because my name is in his midst, is in him. And so that is really at the heart also of our subject. What does it mean when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about the Malach, Ki Shemi Bekirbo? That is a very, very big subject. But that is really at the core of what is written in the Parashat, at the beginning of Parashat Vayera, is that all of our fathers, and it has been the case also till just before the Nevi'im, everything was, I would call it, Malach-centric. That is, all the revelation was never of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. It was always sending a Malach. You see it, with Abraham, you see it with Yitzchak, you see it with Yaakov. And so what is meant is that Kel Shaddai is in order to say it is the God of Shin Dalet Yud. And why is that? Because you see, Shin Dalet Yud is the gematria of the famous Malach, Anirbad Vanora, as there was an old piyut that used to say that. It's a Maseret Chulin that has in the Tzfat. It cites the existence of an old piyut that we don't have today, unfortunately, where they were singing about the Malach Matat, Mem Tet Tet Resh Wav Nun, Anirbad Vanora. And if you take the gematria of those letters, Mem Tet Tet Resh Wav Nun, it has the gematria of 314, which is the gematria of Shin Dalet Yud. So what is meant in the Torah in Parashat Mishpatim is saying Ki Shemi Bekirbo, is to say my name as I've been known to your fathers, which is Kel Shin Dalet Yud. Actually, we share that name, or you can put it more precisely. He is my faithful servant, and I am his God. That's why we call Malach Matat. We never pronounce the name of Malachim that have not been used by our sages into piyutim or songs in an explicit manner. We never pronounce their name before. So that's why we will use a name like Michael. We will use other names of angels like that, but we will never pronounce actually those letters Mem Tet Tet Resh Wav Nun, and actually even one that would like to pronounce it out of recklessness, which I obviously don't recommend to do so, will actually do not know what are the vowels that they should put. They've not been taught to know what are the vowels that correspond. So in any way, it's to be sure nonsense to do so. So Mem Tet Tet Resh Wav Nun is the gematria of 14, which corresponds to Shin Dalet Yud, which corresponds actually to the idea that Kel Shaddai was revealed. That's how he appeared to the fathers. But now he comes to Moshe Rabbeinu and tells them, Ani Yud Kevach. Now the difference between this matter of Ani Yud Kevach and having been as Kel Shaddai to the fathers, I want to start the special next week with explaining that. And just before we end, I want to give you an allusion to something I find it absolutely delightful. It is written like that in delightful. That you see when it's expressed of saying, V'gam ani shamati et na'akat b'nei Israel. Moreover, I have heard the groan of the children of Israel. In other words, telling Moshe Rabbeinu, don't think that as you thought originally, I will be the trouble, like just like in the trouble now. I'm taking it so much lightly what they're going through. But Turin says that if you take the letters Nun, Aleph, Kuf, Tav, and you do the Atbash, you get Tet, Tav, Dalet, Aleph, which is 414. 414. But you know why it should talk to you, holy ladies? You know why 414 should talk to you? You know why? Tet, Tav, Dalet, Aleph. Do you know why it should talk to you? 414. Because you see, here in this lower reality, we know we've had 3 fathers and 4 mothers. But one of the essential teachings of the Ari is that originally this world really had 4 fathers and 3 mothers. And this is why if you would ever be on our table of the Seder, you would think I drank too much with 4 cups of wine, because at the end, if I would sing Arba Mi Yodea, right? I always sing for Arba, but it's like So I'm not going to give you what are the name of the 4 fathers, because we actually have that. And they correspond to what actually brings the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our world, which you could call a form of tzimtzum. But at the level of the Shekhinah, and it should concern you as you Jewish ladies, it should concern you deeply. At the level of the Shekhinah, there are actually names. And the Ari himself says that Nukdeza is called Mehitavel. And she comes from Matred, which herself comes from Mizahar. Now, if you take those 3 mothers, which are like the name of Nukdeza, the name of like symbolically her mother, the name of her grandmother, and if you take the names, all those names together, you will find out that it was a gematria of 414, which is what actually the Balaturim is alluding to, only that he doesn't write it because it goes a bit too far to what he's actually creating. So I'll just leave you with those words and reminding you that the whole goal of these sessions is to be able to have greater bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Besod v'yiftechu becha yodei shekh.